Hello and welcome to Read with Ronald. Today we will be reading the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. First, the trigger warning. Everything you can think of because it takes place during slavery times and Reconstruction, all that. So everything you could think of. And also, I want to give you a spoiler warning and to let you know that we're going to be talking about the book and the movie. And so if you don't want to be spoiled, then please feel free to click off here, and thank you for watching up to this point. And I also want to let you know that if you hear like jingling and stuff like that, or if you see a dog come running through the video, or you see the camera shake, it's Pepper. Pepper is acting up today, but it's her. And if you don't know who Pepper is my dog. She's our new dog. She might make an appearance because she might come jump up here and lick me, or come sit behind me, or do something. See, there she go. You're just gonna lick my lotion off? Now let's get into the video. First published in 1971, Ernest J. Gaines' The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman follows the titular character as she recounts her life from slavery all the way up to the Civil Rights Movement. The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman was inspired by Gaines' real-life experiences and the older women in his family. His research led him to talk with the elderly in his hometown to replicate how they spoke and thought and corroborate their experiences with historical facts to back them up. The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman was a critical and popular success. So how did I get this book? Okay, y'all, don't come for me, but I, to my knowledge, have never seen the Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. I've heard about it, I know about it, but I've never seen it, to my knowledge. Earlier this year, I read 2 other Ernest J. Gaines books by him. You know, I read A Gathering of Old Men and I read In My Father's House, and I love those books. So I was like, you know what? It's time. It's time. Because what ended up happening was my grandparents actually have Miss Jane Pittman, the movie, on DVD. And I was like, oh, I want to see this. But before I see it, I want to read the book. So that's how we got here. I read this book to watch the movie. Miss Jane Pittman starts with this narrator. It's a fictional narrator. One thing I learned before reading this book was a lot of people thought this book was an actual autobiography, so they all thought Miss Jane Pittman was real, but no, all the characters are fictional, including the narrator. He goes to see Miss Jane. He wants to get her story down because she's already over 100, but she's been alive since slavery times, right? And it's like the 1960s at this point. When he first goes to ask her, you know, it's her and it's Mary Hodges, who's like her caretaker. She's like, what you want my story for? And you know, he's like, it could be for history. And Mary's like, what's them history books for? They ain't good enough for y'all? And he's like, Miss Jane not in them. So, you know, Miss Jane and Mary, they be giving him a hard time. She agrees to do the interview because if she don't, he just gonna keep bothering her till she do. He wanted it to be done before school started, but it took longer than expected, and it was kind of all over the place. She had this man named Pat helping her tell some of the stories. Some people would come in and tell the stories. Sometimes she'd backtrack, change details. Sometimes Mary would get an attitude with him. It was just all over the place, but he learned he couldn't tie up all the loose ends in the story because life don't have loose ends. And so he tried to keep the style of the story consistent with how she spoke and stuff like that. And he did his best to like clean it up to make it like understandable. I will say this, I love the way that it's written because it is written like that, because it'd be certain moments where it'd be like, we listen to the story and it'd be like, she started talking about something else and it'd be like, okay, what you doing? What about this? And then, or it would be like moments where she's telling the story and she'll stop like she's talking to somebody, and I had to remember like, oh yeah, she's talking to the narrator. And then it'd be moments where the story would just like stop and just start up somewhere completely random, and it'd be like, but I loved it. I loved it because it went with the narrative flow of how she would have talked. And so then we learned that Miss Jane died like 8 months after they finished doing these interviews. And like everybody was at the funeral. They, you know, they added to the story, and that's how we got into the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. So today is October 20th, and I've started reading the autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman. And yeah, this is actually a very interesting and really good book. I'm really enjoying it right now. I like how spunky Miss Jane is. The first part is taking place during the war years, so it's very interesting. I feel like the experience is kind of a little bit like played down though. You know, kind of like how Kindred was to make things, you know, easier to read. But I'm enjoying the book so far. I am. It starts with her in the summer, like the year before the Civil War ends. She's a slave, and some Confederate soldiers ride up to the property. So she calls them secession, you know, short for secession. So the secession soldiers, they show up, and her mistress tells her, go get some water for them. So she go get some water for them. They stop, they complain, they do all of this, feeling what's going on. And Miss Jane, she finds it ironic that they sitting there complaining, worn out, they tired. And she finds it funny how these are the same guys who just earlier in the war was like, oh, this ain't gonna take but a day. This ain't gonna take too long. We gonna whip them and be back in time for dinner. So she just finds that ironic. And at this point, her name is Ticey. Her name has not been changed to Jane yet. Her name is Ticey. So that's what everybody calls her. So the success soldiers, they leave, right? And then that evening, the Union soldiers show up. The mistress tells her, go get some water for them too. And Jane, she complains because she always having to haul water. She got to haul it here, got to haul it there. She always got to haul this water, right? So she got haul water for these Union soldiers. Corporal Brown, but Jane can't say Corporal, so he tells her call him Mr. Brown. He asks Jane some questions about how how she's treated there and stuff like that. And Jane at first is reluctant to share because her mistress threatened her that if she shared, she would get whipped. After some coaxing and having a soldier go do her chores for her, Jane tells him like how she's treated there and stuff like that. And Mr. Brown tells her, oh, we're going to set you free. And he changes her name to Jane Brown because that's the name of his girl back home name. So he calls her Jane Brown. And so after they leave, the mistress is calling her by her old name, which is Ticey, but she's not responding. So the mistress comes over there. She's like, don't you hear me calling you? And Miss Jane is like, my name is not Ticey no more. It's Jane Brown. And so she gets whipped for this. While she's being whipped, they keep telling her, say her name. And she's like, her name is Jane Brown. She gets moved out into the field. She was working in the house, but she gets moved out into the field because the mistress don't want her in her sight no more. And it was about this time that she was like 10 or 11. She suspects she was like 10 or 11. She didn't really know her age, but she suspects she was about 10 or 11. So then a year later, the master, who during the first ordeal was hiding out in the swamp, calls them all up to the house and tells them, y'all free. Y'all can either stay or y'all can go. If y'all stay, things will still pretty much be the same around here, but you'll get paid this much. Miss Jane, she like, I'm leaving. Miss Jane and the driver, the old driver, they get in a fight with each other because they was going back and forth with each other. So they get in a fight. Miss Jane, she pick up a gardening tool to go chop his head off. This man, an older black man, he's been there for the longest time. He's like the wise one of the group. His name is Unc Esom. And Unc Esom stops her. And so after he breaks it up, he takes everybody down to the quarters so they can negotiate what they're going to do. All the old folks are going to stay because this is what they're used to and it might not get no better than this. All the young folks want to go because they ain't staying around. Miss Jane, she leaves with the young folks. And Unc Esom, he tries to exert his authority and, tries to make the young folks stay because he's like, y'all breaking your parents' heart. The young folks like, we leaving. So he tries to assert his authority, but it doesn't work. Before they leave, he warns them. He's like, y'all gonna find out what life is like soon enough, basically. The master gave them some potatoes and corn to take with them, and they got to take their clothes, the two little outfits they had, and they get a move on. They're walking, but they weren't prepared for this journey because they didn't think freedom was going to come. They're kind of just walking aimlessly until Big Laura takes the lead. So Big Laura is this lady with 2 kids, and, she was very strong. So she takes the lead, and she's leading them, and they stop in this thicket of sycamore trees. And while they're there, everybody gets to talking about what their new names are going to be. Jane already has her name, Jane Brown, that she got from Mr. Brown. Another of the group says that his name is gonna be Brown too, and Jane's like, no you don't, that's my name. And the guy, he's like kind of like, he's not all the way there mentally, so he and Jane get into it. But Big Laura come over there and she breaks it up and she tells him, if you're gonna act like you still a slave, then get back to the plantation. And that goes for all of y'all. If y'all gonna act like y'all not free, get back to the plantation. Nobody wants to leave, so they get moving north again until it's time to rest. After they settle down, they they eat, they lay down for the night. They wake up the next day in kind of like a frenzy because there's some patrollers coming. And if you don't know what patrollers are, they used to be people who would catch slaves and bring them back to plantations. But now that everybody's free, they running around killing people who's running to freedom. Everybody runs and hides. Jane grabs Big Laura's son, Ned, and goes and hides in some bushes. The patrollers, they get to the one that was arguing with Jane the night before. And then, they get to some other people, including Big Laura. So during all of this, Jane and Ned are hiding in the bushes. And then after they leave, Jane starts looking for Big Laura to return Ned to her. But she finds Big Laura and Big Laura's baby dead. She takes Ned and they carry some flint and iron that Big Laura used to start a fire. And they keep moving north. They get to this river and they come across this group of happy black people who are returning to their plantation with their former mistress. Miss Jane, she stops to talk with the former mistress to find out how to get north. And the lady tells her, oh, there is no Ohio, because that's where Mr. Brown was from. He's from Ohio, so that's where Miss Jane trying to get. After they get to talking, I guess who was the lady's overseer for her plantation, he keeps talking about, just give me the word, mistress, just give me the word, I'll take care of her, because he don't like the way Miss Jane talking to the lady. The lady, she keeps telling Miss Jane, oh, there ain't no Ohio. Just come back with me to my place. I'll make sure you're taken care of. And so after they eat and stuff, Miss Jane, she like, thank you for the food, but we moving. So they keep moving. And the lady tells them that there's a ferry that can take them across the river. So they go to this ferry, right? They get to the ferry, and the ferry captain will not take them on because they ain't got no money. and they not with nobody. So he kicks them off. They basically just sit alongside the river basically as the ferry goes across, and it comes back and this man rides up. And he's like, what y'all doing over there? Oh, we need to get on the ferry. So he takes them on the ferry with them. And then this man, he's like, so where y'all going? And they tell him where they're going. And he's from New York. So he's like, oh, well, y'all come with me and I'll find y'all a place for the night. So he puts them up in a house for the night. And this house is basically like a house that was started for like black kids who are orphaned and stuff like that. It's for them to stay in. And, they work and they go to school and stuff like that. Miss Jane and Ned, they stay there for the night. She don't really like it at first, but she's like, I can get used to this. Until an incident takes place in the boys' room at night. Basically, another boy was trying to get the stones from Ned, and Ned was not letting them go because Miss Jane told him, do not lose them stones. We need them. And so when the boy tried to take the stones, Ned hit him over the head. And so the boy was crying. Miss Jane told the guy who's running the place, oh, as long as nobody mess with him, he won't mess with nobody. And the guy don't like Miss Jane because she too mouthy. So the next day, Miss Jane tells Ned, it's time to get up out of here. So they leave, and everybody suspects they just like going for a walk and they gonna come back. But nope, they leave. This whole time, they're still in Louisiana. That's where they've been this whole time, is Louisiana. They walk into town and they come across these two black soldiers. They laughing, having a good time, and she asks them, hey, how I get to Mr. Brown? So they set her up for failure. They like, what you want, Mr. Brown? And she's like, I need to see him. They set her up for failure, basically. Like, oh, he over there, go see him. So she goes in there to see him. And the person who's like, I guess running the front desk, they're like, what you want here? And she's like, I need to see Mr. Brown. And he's like, Mr. Brown not here. So Miss Jane, she decided we gonna stand there and wait. And then she sees the men keep like going in and out, in and out, in and out. And so she get frustrated and she goes in there and she sees Mr. Brown, but it's not the Mr. Brown she's looking for. She sees this man, he's old, and he asks, oh, what you doing in here? She's like, I'm trying to get to Ohio. So he turns around to look at the map like, okay, Ohio, and she's like, we ain't gonna get nothing here. So she take Ned and she keep moving. And so as they're walking, they come across this like poor white lady who, she's fussing at them. She's telling them, get away from our house, for I set this dog on you. Miss Jane just trying to ask how we get north, and the lady like, get away from my house. As they're getting ready to leave, she come back out with this water, and she, pours the water in their hand because they're not allowed to drink from the cup. So she pours the water in their hand, and while she's doing it, she's like, I'm a God-fearing woman. If I wasn't a God-fearing woman, I would sick this dog on you. I'm going to tell them where y'all at because I hate y'all. So they keep moving. As they're walking, they come across this hunter, this black hunter. He's like, I could have killed y'all if I wanted to, but I was wondering why it's two black children walking around here aimlessly, like, where y'all trying to get to? He feeds them some rabbit, and they talk. He and Miss Jane do not get along because Miss Jane is too mouthy for him. He is looking for his father, who was sold to another plantation. He doesn't know where. And so he's just going around looking for him. He's like, why don't y'all just turn back around and go back where y'all came from because y'all not going to make it. He says Miss Jane might make it to where she going, but Ned not going to make it. And so after they do all this arguing, talking about all this type of stuff, they go to sleep. And so when they wake up, the hunter done made them some food and left. And so they eat the food and keep moving. They're like walking through the bayou and stuff like that. And they get to this old white man's house who brings them inside. He feeds them. And he tells Miss Jane how to get to Ohio. He's like, you will go across this river. This river take you this way. This river take you that way. This where you're at. He's telling her all this stuff. And he goes into this long explanation about like where they're at and stuff like that. And he tells her how long it's going to take her to get to Ohio and how Ned's not going to make it and all the circumstances that they can go through. Trying to discourage her from going because he's like, it's going to be a long and hard journey. And I don't think you're going to make it because you're a little girl. And so after all of this, Jane's like, okay, so how I get there? He's like, well, if you're so determined to go, you do go this way. They walk for like a week, and it's basically the same stuff for a week, tiresome, making it work with their food, getting run off from places, all type of stuff. And then about a week later, they tired and walking, and this guy driving a wagon catches them. His name is Job, and he takes them to his house for the night, and his wife is fussing, so they sleep in his barn for the night. The next day, he takes them to this man named Bone's house. Bone runs this plantation, and so on the way there, they're stopped by some success soldiers, and Job says, oh, he's putting in the work for him. So he takes them to Bone's place, and they end up staying at Bones for like the next 10 to 12 years. And he pays them wages. The men I think they get like $12, and the women got 10, but he was trying to pay Miss Jane 6 because she looked young, too young to be working in the field, but she's like, I can work just as good as any of them out there. So she negotiates her way up to $10, but it's going to be $9.50 because it's 50 cents taken for Ned to get schooling. And then we get into part 2. So today is October 23rd. I finished the first part of Miss Jane Pittman, and yeah, I like Miss Jane. She is so spunky and feisty, and she's just so sure of herself, which is honestly very refreshing considering the time period of part one, especially this type of black character. With that being said, I'm excited for the rest of the book. I really like how it's written. Y'all know Ernest can't do no wrong when it comes to me. I'm really excited to see how the rest of this story is going to play out. You know, we're coming up on Reconstruction in part two, so I just know it's gonna be a hot mess, but we gonna see how it goes. So we get into part two. Part two, they've been at Bones Plantation for a little bit. And things seemed like they was going really good there. You know, they was taken care of, their needs was met. And they brought this school teacher from the north who like would teach them and stuff like this. And everybody loved him. He would go around to everybody's houses eating and stuff like that. And Miss Jane, whenever he would come to her house, she would always send Ned to go like borrow this plate and fork, and it was the same plate and fork that everybody borrowed for the teacher to eat off of. You know, at this point, Ned, he's been calling Miss Jane mama because she's basically the one raising him at this point. He still remembers his actual mom and sister, but Miss Jane has been his mom all this time, basically ever since Big Laura died. Things just seem to be going well. Miss Jane, she likes the teacher, but she don't go to school because she's like, it really ain't nothing there for her to learn. She gotta work and make sure Ned's taken care of. And so then, of course, there are like black politicians coming around trying to get the black people more involved with what's going on politically and stuff like that. And so they invite them to this debate, and it's heated, and then the fight breaks out, and the fight is caused by white supremacists. But Bones Plantation is mostly unaffected by all of this drama until the secession soldiers come back to take back their land. And so Bone loses the plantation because the deal was the North would provide the money to the South if the people from the South got their land back. So the people from the South get their land back, so Bone no longer owns a plantation. The plantation goes back to the secession soldier who owned it before. Things go back to how they was in slavery, except now they're getting paid. But this time, Jane decides not to go running off again when they get the option to leave. She decides to stay this time because she's like, well, if there's nowhere I can go where black people can really be free, it ain't no point in leaving. So she stays on the plantation and she works. But other people start leaving. And Miss Jane, she recalls how like people would like go running through the bayou to escape. And that's how people would get caught up and killed, because they would either drown or like the patrollers and stuff would be back there waiting on them to kill them. And if they wasn't smart, they would drown in the bayou because they can't get across, because you can't wade through it. And so she recalls that. The masters of the plantations, they weren't really all that mad about them leaving at first, because it's like, oh well, the ones who want to leave, they can leave. The ones who want to stay, they can stay. A lot of people start leaving, and they was like, wait a minute, if everybody leave, who gonna run the plantation? So that's how like we get these white supremacist groups terrorizing people into staying. And so as Ned gets older, he joins this committee of black soldiers who do like welfare checks on like all the plantations to make sure that black people are getting everything they need. His job is to ask the people, are they being treated well? Are they happy with what's going on? What do they need? Stuff like that. And to report it back to them. And his job is also to tell people how to get to New Orleans if they want to leave. And at this point, you know, he's grown. Miss Jane says he's become way too serious. She doesn't like that he's so serious. He's changed his name to Edward Stephen Douglas after Frederick Douglass. He's gotten involved with this black committee. The white people, they don't like it. So one night, while Ned is out, Miss Jane is attacked in her house by the Klan. And Ned comes back. He's like, what happened? She's like, the Klan was here. You gotta go. He's gonna take Miss Jane with him, but Miss Jane like, I ain't leaving. After a tearful goodbye, and after she feeds him, Ned leaves and Miss Jane stays. Right after Ned leaves, Miss Jane starts seeing Mr. Joe Pittman. Mr. Joe Pittman is a widower with two girls, Clara and Ella. He likes Jane. Miss Jane likes him, but Miss Jane can't have no kids. And Mr. Joe is like, well, you know what? That ain't no problem with me, just as long as you help me raise my two girls. So they get together, but they don't get married because Miss Jane was not in the church yet. They don't get married. They just start living together. Today is October 25th. This is a very interesting book. I really do like Miss Jane. She is an amazing character. And you know what? I shouldn't have expected nothing less from Ernest J. Gaines. Every Ernest J. Gaines book I've read so far has been amazing. It's been great. I'm kind of interested to see how things are going to go because, you know, now Ned has left home. You know, she's married to Joe Pittman, who came out of nowhere, literally, but you know what, it is what it is. I'm excited to see how this is gonna go. Mr. Joe, you know, he wants to leave the plantation where they're at to go find better work. But Miss Jane is like, she wants to wait till she hears from Ned. And so she hears from Ned a year later, because what happened was Ned sent off a letter to her a month after he made it to Kansas. But the person he sent it to was supposed to give it to the preacher, who was supposed to read it to her. But the person he sent it to forgot about it and just filed it away until he got another letter from Ned like a year later. And so then he gave both letters to Miss Jane. The first letter, it's all hopeful. It's like, oh, things are good out here in Kansas. Everybody's so nice. They're helping us and stuff like that. But then the second letter is like, everybody's tired of us. They trying to run us up out of here. Everybody done flocked to Kansas. There's not enough room out here, not enough resources. The white people want us out. But Ned himself is doing well. He's started working on a farm. He went to school. He's become a teacher. And then he ended up joining the army and fighting in the war in Cuba. While all of this is going on, Mr. Joe finds him a place on the border of Texas and Louisiana. He accepts employment under a new person to break horses because that's what he's good at. And he tells the secession man that took over the plantation, hey, we leaving. And he like, okay, well, y'all can leave after you pay me my $150. So the $150 is for when Mr. Joe got caught up in some mess with the Klan and the guy paid $150 to get him out of it. Mr. Joe, he goes to his new employer and gets this money and comes back and repays it. And then the man is like, well, I need my $30 interest too. Miss Jane has some money that Ned was sending her that came up to $25, but they needed $5 more. So Mr. Joe and Miss Jane, they gotta sell all their stuff to get this $30. And they go to their new place. They get down to Clyde's place, right? And Miss Jane, she gets stationed at the house with this lady named Molly. Molly is another black lady who's older. She's been with the Clyde family for a long time. She's older, so they're like, we need to bring in somebody else to like help you. So when Jane gets out there to help, Molly tells her she don't want no help. She keep putting her hands on her, keep throwing her out the house, keep telling her she don't want her there. Miss Jane stands her ground and she's like, this is where they told me I need to be, so this is where I'm gonna be. So Molly, she pitches a fit. She does all types of stuff to get Miss Jane to leave. She tries sabotaging her work. She tries lying on her. She threatens to quit, and none of that stuff works. None of that stuff gets rid of Miss Jane. And so eventually Molly quits and she leaves. The Clyde family, they boohoo crying because, they loved Molly apparently. Molly, even though she quit, she keeps coming back to visit and stuff like this. And so Miss Jane, she just gets fed up with the whole situation. So she quit. And she tells Joe that she quit. And Mr. Joe's like, you better unquit. And so she unquits. And Molly ends up dying and ends up buried at the place. Miss Jane and Mr. Joe, they stayed down there for about 10 years. Mr. Joe got the nickname Chief because he was the chief horse breaker. And, he was really good at his job. Any horse they brought there, he could break. But then one day, Miss Jane has a dream. Mr. Joe dying, and it's this specific horse that she keeps seeing in her dreams. And then one day, the dreaded horse shows up. He says he's not worried about dying and stuff like that. She saves up a lot of money, enough money for them to leave, but he don't want to leave because he enjoys breaking horses. It's the wildest horse that they've had yet, and Mr. Joe is determined to break this horse. And Miss Jane is like, oh my gosh, my husband's gonna die. So Miss Jane decides to go to this hoodoo lady.
I didn't know ratchet was a language. This is in ratchet.
Because nobody else will listen to her and her concerns. And so she goes to Madame Gautier. She's like, I just want to know if this horse is going to kill my husband. And Madame Gautier tells her, yeah, the horse is going to kill him. Miss Jane is like, we got to do something to figure this out. Like, give me something to, keep my husband from dying to this horse. Madame Gautier tells her, listen, Mr. Joe has something to prove because he don't have no kids and he don't have really no property. So he got something to prove as a man. And him breaking horses is how he's going to prove himself. And Miss Jane is like, no, I need my husband to live. So she give her some powder. What she ends up doing is she ends up going out to the stable and setting the horse free in the middle of the night. Mr. Joe come out and see that she done set this horse free. He's like, what have you done? And he goes chasing after the horse and she's like, no, don't go after it. Just leave it alone. But he goes chase after the horse and he ended up dying because he caught the horse, but because he didn't have the equipment to break it, he ended up getting dragged off his horse and getting dragged through the swamp. And so after he died, they have a small little ceremony for him. And then his successor takes over. His successor ends up marrying his daughter Ella. And they move away and they take Claire with them. So, Miss Jane is all alone again on the place. She's heartbroken after Joe Pittman dies. That's her man for life. She had a few other flings, but none of them could take the place of Mr. Joe. One of the flings she had was this guy named Mr. Burks who moved her upriver, but he left her soon after, and after he left, Ned and his family came back. He done grown into his grown man. He got a wife named Vivian. He got 3 kids. One of them is named after Miss Jane. 2 girls and 1 boy, basically. He plans to teach and, educate the people, and he's following, Frederick Douglass's route of things by, encouraging everybody to work together to, improve the country and stuff like that. But nobody's really willing to listen to him because they're all scared. And, the people are starting to watch him because he's become a little too radical. And so this is the point where we get into Albert Clouveau. So Albert Clouveau is this Cajun man that used to sit with Jane when she would go fishing. Like, he would sit beside her and fish and talk about all of these people he killed. He's killed over like a dozen people. And this was around the time that Jane was making her living as like a washerwoman, surviving off greens and fish. He talks to her and he's like, hey, they're watching Ned. She goes to see Ned, but she can't work up the nerve to warn him about what's going on. And so then the next Sunday, he warns her again, but she still can't work up the nerve. And so then the week after that, he tells her, the clan wants me to kill him. And so at this point, she goes to warn him. But he doesn't listen to her. He's dedicated to what he's going to do, and his wife supports him. So they're like, if we go down fighting, we going down fighting. So then 2 weeks before he dies, Ned gathers like everybody at the river, but it's mostly young people who show up. And he talks to them about what it is to be black and how America is their country too, and how they're not beneath anybody and they need to work together to make the place a better place and stuff like that. You know, just encouraging them to, you know, stand up for themselves and to be warriors, as he put it. He also disagrees with Booker T. Washington, you gotta learn trades to be respected thing. He's like, yes, that's important, but he said he wants black people to succeed in every field, not just in trades. You know, the whole time I'm reading this speech, I'm like, this is giving me Baby Suggs from Beloved. Like, her whole love yourself speech, that's what this speech reminded me of. But it's funny because this speech came first. And while he's talking about this, you know, it's these two brothers on the river who are watching him. Miss Jane, she don't see Albert for like a month. And we learned that Ned, you know, he's buried next to his school. So the school he was building was completed after he died. And so they buried him next to the school. And like the plot that he's buried in is like a place where everybody can go to and like look at and see like the grave of the man who fought for them to have this school. And it's not just a school for black children, it's a school for everybody who lives in the area. And so Miss Jane, she dreams of Ned's death. She dreams that he's lynched, but instead he's shot down by Albert. What happens is he and these two boys was bringing in lumber in the evening, and Albert stopped them on the road and he told Ned to get down from the wagon. The boys, you know, they wanted to protect Ned because they believe in what he's doing, but Ned told them to go home without him, tell everybody what happened, and to keep fighting for the dream. And so when they get to moving on, Albert shoots him down. So then after he dies, you know, they bring his body back to the quarters and everybody's mourning over him. They're crying over him. Miss Jane says there's people crying over him who didn't care about him while he was alive. And they all like taking little mementos, like the pieces of lumber with his blood on it and stuff like that. Miss Jane, she goes and comforts Vivian, and then she has her little own private moment of grieving Ned, and she has to be pulled away from the body and stuff like that. It's just a big sad moment. And then the next day, when the two boys who witnessed the event try to tell the sheriff what happened, he basically plays mind games with them, twisting the situation so that the boys don't seem credible. Nothing comes of Ned being shot down. Vivian stays to finish the school, and then she and the girls leave because she fears for her life. She wants to stay, but she's like, it's too dangerous down here, so we gotta go back to Kansas. And then they bring in this new teacher who just there to teach math, reading, and writing, and that's it. He not there to inspire nobody. He not there to do nothing special. He there to do what they told him to do. So after the death, Miss Jane, she wants to confront Albert, but he is ducking and dodging her. Like, he won't go anywhere near her. He won't come fish next to her no more. Whenever he see her, he go the other way. But one day he slips up because he thought he saw Miss Jane down at the river fishing, who he actually saw was one of her neighbors. So she caught him on the back road while he was trying to avoid her, and she's like, the chariots of hell is coming for you, and when they come for you, I'm gonna be ready to hear you scream. After that, he didn't know no peace. Everybody believes that she put a hex on him, but she's like, I ain't put no hex on him. I just told him that he going to hell. He starts, you know, saying he can hear the chariots of hell. He has 2 daughters and 2 sons. His sons, they've always acted a fool, but nobody cared. But he was trying to keep his daughters pure and innocent. The one he keeps blaming everything on is Adeline. And so Adeline, she comes to Miss Jane one day. She's like, Miss Jane, please take this hex off my father. I can't stand this no more. Miss Jane, like, what it is just his guilty conscience that's affecting him. And so Adeline's like, but I'm over here suffering. Look at me. I'm over here suffering. And she's like, well, girl, I wish you could see my suffering. I'm going through it too. And so what ends up happening is that Albert, he gets worse and worse. He just treats Adeline horribly. He went through that for 10 years, and he was believing that Adeline was the one who was bringing the chariots of hell around him. He believes she was the one that was impure and stuff like that. But really, it was his other daughter who was the one who was out there getting down with all the men in town. He thought it was Adeline, and so that's why he was taking out all his frustration and angers on her. And then he dies. He gets up screaming, and he died with Adeline taking care of him, while everybody else done run off. Today is October 26th, and I finished part 2 of Miss Jane Pittman last night. This is a 5 so far. This is a 5. Y'all know that Ernest J has been one of my favorite authors this year. You know, I love Gathering the Old Men. I loved In My Father's House, and I'm loving Jane Pittman. The reason I love his book so much is because he just represents us so well. And by us, I mean black people, black southern people, black men, all of which I am. Miss Jane Pittman is an amazing character. Ned and Joe, amazing characters. And I like how both of them died believing in what they were doing. Neither one of them died with regret. That's just so interesting. Granted, Joe's death is Miss Jane's fault. Let's be real. It is inadvertently her fault, and that's not to blame her, but her worrying is what killed him. Whereas Ned, Ned went out like a boss, which was great. It was amazing. It is kind of sad that both of them are gone, because I did like them. I wish we got more of Joe than what we did, but it is what it is. But I did like them. I did like them as characters. I like them. So now I'm finna start part 3, and I'm excited to see where this story goes. Because we're at the turn of the century now, so now we're entering the 1900s. So now I'm excited to see what's going to happen now. In part 3, Miss Jane moves to Sampson, which is where she lives for the rest of her life. She moves up there because she got a friend named Aunt Hattie Jordan who tells her, how good things are up there and how, they're treated up there. So she moves up there. And, the people up there, they're colorful, they're lively. There's 2 people who are considered the, best cane workers. That's Hog Ring Toby, who's considered, the king of the cane field. And the reason he's called that is because he tied a hog ring on his lunch pail. And then there's the queen, who's called Black Harriet. Her name's actually Harriet Black, but they call her Black Harriet because she's very dark-skinned. And she's considered, the queen of the cane field, right? And so then one day, here comes this girl named Katie Nelson. I'm talking about something, she's going to become the queen of the cane field, right? So she would egg Black Harriet on, and Black Harriet, she's older, her mind has started to go, so she's not really, all the way there anymore, but she can still work the cane field. So Katie Nelson one day, she decides to egg Black Harriet on. In the morning, she fails, but then in the afternoon, at lunch, she egging her on, and then they get back out there in the field, and as they're racing, Black Harriet, she start messing up in the field. She start chopping stuff. She missing stuff. Then she go over to the cotton. She start digging stuff up that she's not supposed to be digging up. So the overseer, who is Tom Joe, he goes over there. He like, what are you doing? And then he starts, beating on her. And so everybody runs over to save her. Bessie picks up this hoe to chop his head off with it. They end up saving her. Katie gets fired. Black Harriet gets taken to Jackson, Mississippi. And Bessie get fired too for threatening Tom Joe. And so then the summer after Black Harriet left, that's when Jane joins the church. She said everybody was finding religion and they would go down to the service and sing it, have church. She and Grace, they used to sit and talk and they would hear the people having church. And so one day Grace comes to her and she's like, girl, I'm going to find religion. And so what they would do when they would find religion, they would call it their travels, which is basically them telling how they got over it. And so there's this one travel by this guy named Lobo. He talks about how when he was on his travel, he saw this girl named Lizzie get chased up a tree. And Lizzie that's not what happened. I ain't ever getting chased up no tree. I can't climb no tree. And so Miss Jane, she thinks it's funny. And then a few weeks after that, Nancy Williams talks about her travels after she found religion. And Tom Joe is like, well, y'all need to find religion at night. It's cotton first, then y'all find religion second. That pisses Grace off. She goes off running to go pray. She like, I just got to pray for strength because if not, I'm going to end up taking Tom Joe's head off myself. And she's like, I wish I had let Bessie chop his head off when I had the chance. And, she feel bad for praying like that and thinking like that. But then eventually she finds religion. Miss Jane, she wants to find religion too, but she's struggling to find it until she finally does. And she goes to church and she testifies about how she got over. And in her testimony, she talks about how she had this heavy load on her shoulders and this man told her to lug it across the river to the other side. So she going across the river, she come across Ned. She come across Mr. Joe Pittman. She come across all these other people in her life who try to take the load from her, but she's like, nope, I gotta carry it across the river. And so that's how she got over. She made it to the other side of the river. So then we get into Timmy and T-Bob, who are the sons of Mr. Sampson, but Timmy is half black. Timmy is his son with one of the workers on the plantation, and Robert Jr. is his son with his wife. His wife does not like Timmy because Timmy looks more like Mr. Sampson than T-Bob does. Timmy was tasked with riding with T-Bob on horses because T-Bob is weaker. They ride together, they spend time together. And so one day they get it in their mind to prank Jane. They put her on this horse because at this point Jane was riding around on horses too and scared a horse with her on it. So she's just riding all around the quarters on this horse, scared out of her mind, hoping she don't die on the horse. And the horse take her up to the house where Miss Amadine, who is the mistress, where Miss Amadine is sitting. She done seen the whole thing. She's like, was it Timmy who did it? And she's like, child, I don't know. The horse just took off. She lying to cover for Timmy because she don't want nothing bad to happen to Timmy. But Miss Amadine know what happened because she says Robert did the same thing when he was Timmy's age. What happens later is T-Bob gets thrown from his horse a little while later and he breaks his arm and that causes Timmy to be sent away. What happens is he brings T-Bob to the house to get help. Tom Joe, he gets mad at Timmy because he didn't do his job, and he didn't like how Timmy was always acting like he was better than everybody else. He needed to be reminded of his place. So he starts beating on Timmy, but Timmy starts fighting back. Timmy gets sent away for fighting back, and Mr. Robert not gonna stand up for him because he's like, that's not my son. T-Bob's like, where's Timmy? Everybody explains to him why he has to go away, but he won't accept it because he's like, that's his brother, and he missed his brother. And so then the flood of 1927 happens, and Miss Jane says it was caused by people trying to control the river when they should have just let nature be. It destroyed a lot of stuff, but Samson was saved because Mr. Robert, he took preventative measures, and he basically dug a ditch around his plantation to keep the floodwaters. And so then a year after that, Huey P. Long comes into office, and she says she don't care what people say. Huey P. Long helped the poor people. He made sure they was taken care of, and that's why they killed him. She was like, she knows they killed him. She knows it wasn't what they trying to claim it was. She knows they took him out because he was trying to help poor people. She said she don't care what nobody say. He helped, and he made things a little bit better for them. And so then right around that time, that's when the new teacher, Miss Lily, comes in. Miss Lily is this mixed black woman who comes in, and she requires a lot from her students. She wants them to have toothbrushes, but they can't get toothbrushes because they're poor. So then she tries to go buy it from the local store, and they won't give it to her because they're not going to sell toothbrushes to black people. So then she got to go into the city to get the toothbrushes, right? She requires the kids to wear their good clothes to school. She wants the best for her students. One day, as she's walking home, she notices these two boys crying up in a tree with like some smoke at the bottom of the tree. She's like, what's going on? Come down from that tree. And they're like, we can't. Our dad is smoking us, and he's tied us to the tree. So then she tries to get them down from the tree by telling the parents to take them down. And they like, well, they need to learn stop sassing people, and this is how they gonna learn. So then she go running around the quarters trying to get somebody to get them kids out the tree, and nobody will listen to her. So then she runs and tells Mr. Robert. Mr. Robert, like, you need to mind your business. Let people raise their kids how they see fit. And so she just can't take it. So after the school year ends, she leaves. And then they bring in a new teacher. And the new teacher is horrible. He takes advantage of everybody being poor and makes himself richer. And then one day, he messes around with one of the younger ladies in the quarters. And the girl's father comes and basically beats him. And he goes and runs to the sheriff, and the sheriff like, well, you got what you deserved. And honestly, if he didn't do it, I was going to run you out of town myself. So he gets run off from town, right? So then they get in this new teacher. And the new teacher is Mary Agnes Lefebvre. She is Creole, and she comes from this place called Creole Place, which is where all of these Creole people live. And if you're not Creole, you can't live there. You can't even visit there. You can't go there. And the reason why Miss Jane knows this is because there was these two boys, Claudia and Sappho, who called themselves going down there because they're mixed black too. So they go down there and they're like, we gonna join the party. And so while they go down there for the party, they get caught. Sappho trying to be like, oh, we just came down here by mistake. He trying to get up out of there. But Claudia's like, oh no, we gonna prove that we belong here. So-and-so know us, so-and-so know us. But none of them people know them. And so they get run out of there and they get chased down. Claudia ended up getting hurt, but his life is saved by him packing dirt into the wound. They had to run for their lives. But Mary Agnes left that place to go be a teacher in the quarters, and her family, they came like twice to ask her to come back. The first time they tried to force her to come back, she said she wasn't going. The second time they came to beg her to come back, she said she wasn't going. So she's been disowned by her family. And Miss Jane says the whole reason Mary has come out there to teach is because she's trying to atone for the fact that her family also owned slaves, even though they were also black. T-Bob first saw Mary Agnes at his uncle's funeral. You know, all the black people had to go and pay their respects, and T-Bob didn't like it. But he first noticed Mary Agnes there, but he couldn't see her face because she had on this veil. He saw her a few days later when she came up to the house to get firewood, because by this point, Miss Jane was working in the house as a cook. He's like, oh, that girl, she looks almost white. And Miss Jane, she's like, yeah, she's almost white, but not quite. You know, Miss Jane knew what was going through his mind, and she was like, I wonder how far he gonna take it. So at this point, T-Bob is attending LSU. And he would typically come home like every few months, but then his visits get more and more frequent because he wants to see Mary Agnes. And then one day he goes and sees her in the school, and he talks to her about like the upcoming Christmas play and about the school and how things are going, talking about he want to make sure she got the firewood. He would come home, he would go visit her and talk about, you know, safe things. But every Friday, Mary Agnes would go down to New Orleans to hang out with her friends. And so one day he catches her right before she leaves on the bus and talks about the same old stuff. And so then one day he tells his friend Jimmy Kyle, who also goes with him to LSU. He tells him that he likes Mary Agnes, and Jimmy's like, you can't like her. She's not white. She's black, and you're white, and you got to know your place. You got to know the rules of this place. She's only good for one thing, and that's just to sleep with, and that's it. Just to sow your wild oats before you get married to Judy Major, because that's who everybody wants him to get married to. Everybody at this point knows that he has expressed interest in Mary Agnes, but they just think it's just to get his wildness out before he settles down. But Miss Jane knows different. She knows that boy is in love with her. He tells Jimmy that he's in love with Mary Agnes. Jimmy tells him you can't do that. She's only good for one thing. And T-Bob punches him. And so then they get to the house and T-Bob pours him some alcohol. He does a little toast to Jimmy. Jimmy says he thought it was an apology for punching him, but he didn't realize that T-Bob was saying goodbye. So Miss Jane, she confronts Mary and she's like, Mary Agnes, are you in love with him? And she's like, no, he's young and he basically a boy. I'm not in love with him. I know my place. I'm not leading him on. Miss Jane tells Miss Amadine, because Miss Amadine asks. And so Miss Amadine's like, how dare you say that? I'ma prove he's not in love with her. So she throws a little engagement party for him and Judy, right? And as soon as they come over, he leaves to go see Mary Agnes. He shows up drunk. He confesses his love to her and she's like, look, this can't happen. She's packing to go to New Orleans like she does every weekend, right? He realizes she's packing. He's like, where are you going? She's like, I'm going to New Orleans. And so he's like, you can't leave me. So while all this is going on, Miss Jane is at the house and Clamp is on his way. Clamp is the one who saw the conversation at the bus stop, right? So he's on his way to get Mary Agnes to take her to the bus for New Orleans, right? When he gets down there, he sees a man running out of the cabin and he thinks it's another boy that was trying to get with Mary Agnes a few weeks ago, but he realizes it's T-Bob. So he runs in there and he sees Mary Agnes laying on the floor. So he goes running for help. He goes to Joe Simon and Ida and he's like, Ida, I need your help. And Joe Simon's like, she ain't going down there and getting that mess. Miss Ida like, Joe, move out the way. Come on, Clamp, you go tell Miss Jane what happened. Go get help from the house and I'm gonna go see after Mary Agnes. But Clamp, he's acting scary. He's like, I need somebody to go with me. So they go down there to the house. Miss Ida gets Mary Agnes together. And so she turns around, she sees Clamp standing behind her. She's like, you went and got help, right? And he's like, I need somebody to go with me. So she starts screaming and going off because she's like, why are men so useless? Why can't y'all ever do anything that I asked y'all to do? Clamp does run up to the house for help. Miss Jane is up there with Jules Reynard. He is T-Bob's parrain, right? They in the kitchen, you know, talking, having coffee. And Ethel, she's one of the maids. She running back and forth, serving food and sandwiches, right? She says T-Bob to run up there and locked himself in the library and they're like, what is going on? So then Clamp runs up there. Jules trying to keep everything under control. So once everybody gets filled in on what's going on, Mr. Roberts starts trying to break down the door with an axe. He breaks down the library door with an axe and they run in there and they find T-Bob dead with a letter that he's left behind explaining what happened. And basically in the letter he says Mary Agnes is innocent. She didn't do anything. She didn't lead him on. She didn't kill him. He did this to himself. Mr. Robert, he wants to go have Mary Agnes arrested, put in jail, and executed for the death. But Jules is like, you know that's not what happened. Jimmy Kaya comes by. He starts claiming, oh, I told him this would happen. It's that girl's fault. She did it. She led him on. Jules gets him together. He slaps him in the face. He like, you gonna tell me everything that happened. You gonna tell me everything you told T-Bob, right? The sheriff comes and Jimmy Kaya has to talk to the sheriff and tell him what happened. They all go down to see Mary Agnes and they confront her about what's going on. Mary Agnes says he did not force himself on her. What happened was he was confessing his love and she was getting ready to leave and he grabbed her and threw her into the wall and she fell on the floor and then he got scared and ran out and that's what happened. She gotta leave. She gotta go. And she can't tell nobody what happened. So she leaves. The next day, Jules takes Miss Jane home and they talk and he says that he believes what happened is after she fell on the floor, she just had this look on her face where she just basically accepted her fate. And he says that this is what scared T-Bob because he realized how much power he had, couldn't handle having that much power. So he ran off and he did what he did. And he says that it's everybody's fault that T-Bob did what he did, including Miss Jane, because they all held up the rules and enforced the rules when he was in love with this girl. And he couldn't be with her because of what everybody was telling him was wrong. Today is October 27th. I finished reading part 3 of Jane Pittman earlier today. And I'm getting ready to start part 4. But before I start, I just want to give my thoughts on part 3. This whole drama between Mary Agnes and T-Bob was... yeah, that was a soap opera. That whole part of the book went how I expected it was going to go. One of the things that's funny about reading this book is that you forget that it's supposed to be direct, like from the mouth of Miss Jane Pittman. And so there's some parts in the book where like she'll be telling a story and then all of a sudden she'll talk like she's talking to someone and I'll be like, what's going on? And then I remember, oh yeah, it's because she's like supposed to be physically telling us through tape recording. But yeah, I'm about to get into part 4. This is the final part of the book. I'm excited to see how this is going to go because so far the book, I was going to say that it just seemed all over the place a little bit like this third part, but I think that's the point because it's supposed to be this 100-plus-year-old lady recalling her whole life, and the narrator told us at the beginning that she tended to be all over the place with the story. And I also think it just showcases how life is not like direct linear like that. Like life be going all over the place. So I'm enjoying this book. It's a 5 so far. I'm hoping it stays a 5. So then we get into part 4, and about this time it's about the 1930s, and then there's another Jimmy that comes. This Jimmy is Lena Washington's nephew, and he has no parents because his father done run off. His mom is going into the town to work, so he's being raised by Miss Lena. And everybody feels like Jimmy is the one who's going to lead them to freedom, lead them forward. Because everybody's believing he's the one, they are all taking a hand in raising him. He's writing their letters for them, and they're like teaching him to be smart and stuff like that, and encouraging him to like write. Miss Jane, she moves back down into the quarters because she no longer can be the cook for the house by this point. You know, she has her hand in helping raise Jimmy too. So then Jimmy goes off to visit his mom in the city, and this boy named Coon takes over his responsibilities, and Miss Jane paints Coon out to be like not as good as Jimmy. But honestly, I related so much to Coon, even though he only had like 2-3 sentences describing him, because Coon was exactly how I am. She says that Jimmy, he would write their letters, he'd put in all this description, all this detail, he'd make everything sound, you know, nice and good. Coon was like, he did exactly what you told him to do. Wrote exactly what you told him to wrote. He said exactly what you wanted him to say. He did everything exactly the way you wanted it. And he wouldn't do no more, no less. Why is Coon me? Because if you tell me, write this, I'm going to write exactly what you told me to write. I'm not adding in all this extra. I'm doing what you told me to do. I'm doing what you asked me to do. So I related to him on that. But that's why Miss Jane says Coon was not the one, and it only enforces that Jimmy was. She says that that was Jamie's way of showing that he cared and that he took care of them and that, you know, he made them feel like good about themselves, whereas Coon was just like, I'm gonna do what I'm supposed to do and that's it. That's all you getting from me. If you want to be flowery, then you need to be flowery with how you talk. If you want me to be all caring, you need to tell me to be caring. I know the way I'm describing it does not sound all that good, but I related to Coon on that. And so after T-Bob's death, Mr. Robert parceled off the land to all the black people for sharecropping because he says he don't have no other kids to leave it to, even though Timmy is out there somewhere. Over time, the white people, they got the good land and the black people got the not so good land. So the black people started leaving because they couldn't do nothing with the land they got. Once they left, their houses would be torn down. The Cajuns started getting more and more control of the land. And so it ended up basically being like a situation kind of like in a gathering of old men. So the Cajuns like owned the land and the black people would be working it for them. And so Jimmy saw all these experiences. He heard all these experiences. Miss Jane said she could tell that he wished he could do something about it, but he really couldn't. And by the time he was 12, that's when he started getting into trouble. He got into trouble with this girl named Eva. They was being curious little 12-year-olds. So they got caught and Miss Lena wore him out in the kitchen because that's where he asked to be wore out at. And so everybody was disappointed in him for doing this because he's like, you're supposed to be the one, you're supposed to be different. But Etienne is like, well, you know, it's only natural that he would do that. You know, he's a boy, he's curious. I was like that at his age. And Miss Jane is like, well, he's not you, Etienne. They start trying to be curious again in the loft. And they get caught because all the kids was playing hide and seek and they was nowhere to be found. And all the kids was like, oh, they up in the loft. And so the adults' response, they're all like, oh, we already know how Eva gonna be. We know what type of person she gonna be. Jimmy's supposed to be different. Their decision is that Jimmy needs to find religion, right? So they start praying extra hard for him to find it. They have him in church a lot, you know, which nothing wrong with that, but still. But Jimmy is having trouble finding it. He doesn't find it at 12. And so then the next year comes around at 13, which is like August of 1951. He finds it and, you know, he testifies how he got over it. Now everybody wants him to preach. And he's like, I don't want to preach. I'll do anything else in the church, but I don't want to preach. And everybody's like, you do so well though with talking, you need to preach. And so basically Miss Jane is like, let the boy do other work in the church. If he ever decides he wants to preach, then he can preach. And everybody agrees to that. And at this point, Miss Jane was church mother, right? But she lost her position as church mother because she liked baseball too much. And what she meant by that was sometimes she would skip church to listen to the baseball games on the radio. And so Jimmy, you know, he does everything in the church but preach, but he's feeling the pressure of everybody wanting him to be the one. And he says it's like a tiger inside his chest that he wants to let out, but he doesn't know how. There are people outside of Samson who also want him to be the one, because he goes around traveling with this lady, Miss Olivia Antoine, does grocery runs for everyone in the quarters and stuff like that, and for people outside the quarters. And he would go with her to, you know, like help write down the orders, and he would listen to their experiences. Everybody wants him to be the one, basically, right? So then a few years later, he goes off to school. And the same year he goes off to school is when the desegregation bill is passed. Civil rights starts up. Mr. Roberts, he's like, his people, his black people know better. And so he like, y'all better not be out there demonstrating. That goes for everybody from the oldest, which is Jane, on down to the youngest, which ends up being Eva's son. Y'all need to remember who's providing for y'all and who's taking care of all y'all needs. And to further prove his point, this lady named Yoko, her son, Batlo, went out there demonstrating. And Yoko got kicked off the place. Even though she had nothing to do with it, she and her family had to leave. And so Batlo makes a big show of being kicked off the plantation. He can make this sign saying she been here all these years and now she getting kicked off because of this. And so a year later, she dies, and they get permission to bury her back in the quarters where her husband is. And so then right after that, Jimmy comes back home. Jimmy has lost his faith, but he's still fighting for black people. This is what we're doing, and we need your help. All the old people are like, we're old, we can't do nothing, not trying to lose the little life that we have. What you want us to do? Miss Jane tells him, you just gotta give them time. They're not ready yet because they're not fed up enough. And Jimmy's like, we don't have time. And he tells this plan that they have. They plan to have this girl drink the whites only water fountain in town and have her arrested so that they can go demonstrate. And the whole reason they plan to go march on the courthouse is because they want to go viral. And he has this other boy with him. And this boy, he keeps talking, and Miss Jane do not like him. She thinks he's being very disrespectful. He just looks silly because he's dressed up in overalls trying to act like he's from the country and stuff like that. And so she gets fed up with him, and she's like, who taught you how to talk like this? And he's like, oh, it's just rhetoric. And she's like, well, you need to keep your rhetoric to yourself and shut up. And so while they're explaining the plan, they offer Miss Jane to come with them to like demonstrate too and stuff like that. And Miss Jane, she's all for it. She's like, okay, what you want me to do? The boys, they carry out their plan. They're ready to march. So all the old people, they're trying to talk Miss Jane out of it. They're like, don't do it, girl. At this point, she's well over 100. And Miss Jane is like, I'm doing it. They're gonna march on Monday morning at 9. And so they talking to people, and people are like, oh yeah, we'll go with you. And then as soon as they leave, we ain't going with them. Miss Jane is worried about them. And there's this guy who's like in charge of like the overflow bucket of water at the water fountain named Bush. And Bush takes pleasure in like scaring all the black people away from the water fountain and making things hard for them. And so the night before it all goes down, Miss Jane prays for everything, right? And she finds it ironic how everybody wanting Jimmy to be the one, but now that he's here being the one, all of a sudden everybody like, oh no, this is not what we want. We not ready for this. We scared. I was there with Miss Jane. Everybody wants change until it's time for change to happen. And that's why I'm like, this is a lesson in being careful what you pray for and being ready for what you pray for. You can't be praying for stuff to change, and then when stuff start happening, all of a sudden, oh no, I didn't expect for it to go like this. Like, what was you praying for then? And she starts reminiscing on like her place, you know, taking everything in just in case she gets kicked out. And so Brady is supposed to carry her to town in the morning, right, for this demonstration. He shows up drunk, basically so that he can't carry her into town. And, you know, he starts crying and breaking down. He's like, I'm sorry, Miss Jane, I just couldn't do it. And she's like, boy, just go home. Just go home. So he goes home. Lena comes in. She talks about how she's scared for Jimmy. But she says she's going to go because she knows Jimmy's going to die. But she needs to be there. Mary Hodges, the Mary from the beginning who, you know, she wants to shoot the narrator. She also says she's going. Etienne is also going. You know, the core people is going. So then the morning of, as they're getting ready to go, you know, they started moving up the quarters, and Miss Olivia is going to take them up there. And as they're up there getting ready to go, they see like half the quarters come up ready to go with them, and they all going to take the bus out there, right? So then here comes Mr. Robert. Mr. Robert's like, y'all can all go home. Ain't going to be no demonstrating. And so they're like, why? They shot Jimmy at 8 this morning. And everybody is shook and it's sad. But Miss Jane like, well, Jimmy might be dead, but his spirit ain't dead, and what he was working for ain't dead, so I'm still going. And Mr. Robert's like, Miss Jane, you've been here all this time. Don't do this. And she's like, I'm doing it. And giving him one final look that says, I'm doing it, and then walking off to go do it. And that's how the book ends. It's early in the morning on October 28th. And I just finished. I enjoyed it. It was so good. It was phenomenal. Part 4 is a lesson. Being careful what you pray for, because if the Lord sees fit and it's in His will, He's going to give it to you. And it's also a lesson in being prepared for what you pray for. because then people prayed that Jimmy would be the one that would lead them forward, that would be the one to like change things around there, and they raised him up to be that way. And so he finally started doing that. Now they scared. Now they don't want it. And it's like, y'all asked for this, so why is y'all shocked that now it's coming to pass? It was so good. It was phenomenal. I love how Jimmy reminded Jane of Ned because he also wanted to make change. And I love how she took the lessons that she learned from Ned and applied it to Jimmy. And in the end was able to stand not necessarily beside him, but to fight for what he believed in. I very much enjoyed this book. I gave it 5 stars. Mr. Ernest can't do no wrong when it comes to me and his books. He has had hits with me so far. And My Father's House was a hit, Gathering of Old Men was a hit, and now Miss Jane Pittman was a hit. And this was just such a good book. I enjoyed it so much. It was just so many things just that resonated with me. I really loved Miss Jane's character. I loved how headstrong she was, how like she wasn't gonna let nobody tear her down, knock her down, beat her down. I love that for her character, especially because of the time period when like it was expected for Black people to be subservient and to, you know, not stand up for themselves, except what happened to them. I love that she was not willing to go down like that without a fight. And I love that she never let her spirit be broken. I loved Mr. Joe Pittman. I loved Ned. I loved Jimmy. Like, I loved them. I love their characters. I love that they didn't dim Miss Jane's light. Like, they were good counterparts to her. And I love that she took lessons from each of them and learned from each of them too. It was just a great book. I enjoyed the whole book. I learned some things too from the book. So now let's get into the movie. I'm gearing up to watch the movie. And I want to talk my preconceived notions. I'm not entirely sure if I've ever seen this movie. Going into this, I was like, I've never seen it, but I remember when I was a little kid seeing this scene of like this Black lady with this baby fighting off all these white people. And it was obviously during slavery times, right? And I remember this scene vividly because the baby was crying, but after the confrontation, she was dead, the baby was dead. And I remember being so upset because I wanted her to win so badly. I remember seeing this scene, but I could never remember where it was from. But after reading the scene with Big Laura fighting off the patrollers in the book, I'm kind of wondering if it was this movie that I saw that scene from. So now I'm like, I'm not sure if I've seen this movie before or not. I do know the movie's going to be good. The movie in itself is going to be amazing. I know that. Everybody who's seen this movie loves it. So I know it's going to be good. But as an adaptation, I'm a little nervous because the last adaptation of Ernest J. Gaines' book we watched was A Gathering of Old Men, which the movie was good, but the adaptation, they made some changes. They changed the ending. I didn't really care for the new ending because it was anticlimactic, so that's why I'm nervous with this movie. Granted, this adaptation came first, but I'm still nervous for it because I'm like, is it going to go that same route where the movie is good, but the adaptation's kind of iffy? I know it's going to be good. I know I'm going to have a good time. I know it's going to deliver with a good script, good acting, good everything. I know it's going to be great. I'm just ready to see how this adaptation going to go. The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman was adapted into a 1974 CBS television movie. It was produced by Robert W. Christensen and Rick Rosenberg, written by Tracy Keenan Wynn, and directed by John Cordy. The movie starred Cicely Tyson as the titular Miss Jane Pittman. The movie was first conceived in 1971 when Ernest J. Gaines was shopping the rights around to various networks. In her memoir, Just As I Am, Cicely Tyson recalls Gaines contacting her to play Miss Jane while she was filming Sounder. She had just read the book and believed Miss Jane Pittman was real and was flattered that Gaines wanted her for the role. The two met and she was introduced to the women that Miss Jane Pittman was inspired by. CBS gained the rights to the adaptation in 1973 when one of the producers fought to have it made there after various networks passed on it. The producers originally wanted a Black screenwriter, specifically James Baldwin, but were unable to secure one. Tracy Keenan Wynn was selected to write the film with Ernest J. Gaines' blessing. Cicely Tyson was everybody's first pick for the role, but producers were concerned they wouldn't be able to secure her because she had just been nominated for an Oscar for her role in Sounder the previous year. However, Cicely Tyson was eager to play the role, believing it would provide a good counterbalance to the emerging blaxploitation genre, but was nervous to portray the older Miss Jane Pittman because she herself was only 49. To prepare for the role, she visited an old folks' home and spent time with 3 women while learning their speech patterns and movement. The movie was filmed on location in Louisiana for 5 weeks on a budget of under $1 million. And honestly, learning this shocked me. If you are not aware, $1 million is not a very big budget for a movie. That's extremely low budget. So I was honestly very surprised that they were able to pull off what they pulled off with this movie with that budget. The Autobiography of Miss Jane Pittman premiered on January 31st, 1974, drawing in 50 million viewers. It was the first TV movie to be shown without any commercial breaks in between. The film was well received and earned 9 Emmys out of 13 nominations. Cicely Tyson was nominated for a BAFTA for her performance and earned 2 historical Emmys, becoming the first Black woman to win in the Best Lead Actress in a Drama category and the first and only woman to win an Emmy for the currently retired Actress of the Year in a special category. Y'all, I had to pause the movie because, let me just show y'all. Look at that. Look at that. Why I thought the narrator in the book was Black. That's the narrator. But he's not a narrator no more because we started off differently from the book. But we started off with the ending. But my thing is, why I thought the narrator was Black? Why every time I be thinking a character is Black, they turn out to not be Black? It's still a good start, but it's just, I was just a little taken aback because I thought the narrator was going to be Black. But granted, he's not a narrator no more. Now he's a magazine editor, but we still gonna watch. Y'all, would I be wrong to say I'm surprised they actually cast a child to play Miss Jane as a child? I was half expecting them to have Cicely Tyson with the little, just portraying a little girl. I was half expecting it because that seems to be the course of action with a lot of movies. Just have the adult person just de-aged as far as they can to be a child. So I'm quite surprised they actually have a child playing a child for once. Y'all, I think this is the movie I seen because they went in the barn. And that's where the scene I remember took place. I think this might be the movie. I think I have seen this before. Yep, this is the movie. This is the movie. This is the scene I remember seeing when I was a kid. I've seen this movie before. So I have seen it before. This makes me happy. I think though right after this scene I left because I was mad that Big Laura got took down. So I don't know if I've seen the whole thing, but this is the scene I remember seeing. This movie said, I'm gonna do what I want to do. Forget the book. I'm gonna do what I want to do. Narrator white, Joe Black, and now I'm wondering how we gonna get to Bones Plantation because Joe was the way to Bones Plantation, but now he's the man that dropped him off at the river. This movie said, I'm gonna do what I want to do. Forget the book, but we gonna see. We gonna see. Now, who told Cicely Tyson to get in this movie and act like this? She is acting her tail off. Acting her tail off. So we just got past Joe Pittman's death, right? And I'm over here all emotional because it was emotional. They did that, right? And then we get to Ned coming home. And whoever did the casting on older Ned, when he's grown, needs to be fired. Because how we go from Ned being dark skinned to Ned being brown skinned? Ned was darker than me, then he showed back up, and now he looked like me. I need answers. So I knew this being an adaptation, I knew some stuff was going to get left out. But I didn't think we was going to leave out T-Bob and Mary. That's a whole section of the book that got left out. So I just finished the movie. It was great. It was amazing. But let's be real. Let's be real. That ending where she drank from the fountain, y'all know full well Miss Jane would not have been able to go up there, drink from that fountain, and go on about her business like nothing happened. That's not what would happen. That's a fantasy ending to the storyline. But it was enjoyable. It was enjoyable. I liked the movie. It was good. The movie was phenomenal. I give it a 5 out of 5. Miss Cicely Tyson, she played that role. She played that role so well. Everybody did a good job. The movie was good. Adaptation-wise, I think for adaptation, I'll give it a 4. For the most part, they stuck to the storyline. The only big changes were they cut the whole third part of the book. The act with Mary Agnes and T-Bob, all of that was cut. They had a different ending. I'm not gonna say I didn't care for it. Like, I understand why they made that ending. Like I said, it's fantasy. That ending is fantasy. Like, y'all know full daggone well, that if Miss Jane had done that in real life, had gone up there, no matter if she was 110 or not, had she gone up there and drunk from that fountain like that, Bush would have knocked her down. and she would have been in jail. They would not have cared if she was a 110-year-old lady. They would have knocked her down for daring to go outside of her place. I was glad that Miss J went up there and drank from that water fountain. It needed to happen. But let's be real. She would not have been able to walk away from there and go back on home like nothing happened. But I understand why they made that ending, because in the behind the scenes featurette, they said they wanted to have a hopeful, inspiring, uplifting ending. The little story behind the scene, they said they almost didn't get it because it was raining, and then like it was dark by the time it stopped raining, so they basically had to like get all the day scenes while they could in between the rain, and they only had that day to shoot at the courthouse, and then the courthouse wasn't even in Louisiana where they were shooting. They had to go over to Mississippi to shoot there, and so the production was just a hot mess. And then they had to light the scene like it was daylight, but they really shot it at night and nobody be able to tell. It was just a hot mess. And I also learned that the scene that I did remember from childhood was the scene that I remembered. It was bittersweet seeing that scene because, you know, it made me happy to finally know what the movie was that I had been thinking about all this time. And I'm like, where was that scene from? It was from Miss Jane Pittman. But it was bittersweet because I wanted Big Laura to win. It was also kind of bittersweet because the person who played Big Laura, she was a singer in real life, right? They cut all of her scenes of her singing. Like there's this montage where it shows them walking right before the big fight where they leave the plantation, they're walking, and it's just them walking. And so in the behind the scenes featurette, they played the song of her singing because they asked her to sing it in the interview. She's singing it and they played it over the scene. I'm like, ooh, that would have fit so well. And the song that she chose would have tied it all together so well. And I wish they had done it. I wish they wouldn't have cut it. The movie was so good. It was so enjoyable. I enjoyed the book. The whole experience was enjoyable. And that's all I have to say on it. So thank you for tuning into this video. If you liked it, go ahead and give it a like, a comment, and subscribe to my channel for more amazing content. And I'll see you next time.